Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call. And Leanne is producing today. Coming up on the show this morning, a dark cloud looming over Tipperary after 3 people died in 2 separate road crashes in the last couple of days. We'll be hearing from Deputy Ryan O'Mara. The Association of Catholic Priests left disappointed by the Vatican's decision to reject the ordination of female deacons. SIP2 members confirm additional days of strike action will take place at Caredock. Thomas Conway has the global news. We'll be hearing from our relationships expert, Susan O'Donoghue, as well. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of your newspapers, and right across the newspapers today, coverage of that great tragedy on Bondi Beach in Australia. The Independent leading with the story that father and son terrorists murder 15 at Bondi Beach. I think that may have gone up now to 16 at this point. But the Jewish holiday event and President Connolly, condemns the appalling anti-Semitic attack, and Gardaí stepping up security patrols at events here to celebrate Hanukkah. The Irish Times, and again the headline there, Gardaí to increase security at Jewish events after the Bondi attack. Also reading on the Times today that the US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said last night that a lot of progress was made at the Berlin talks on a possible Ukraine peace deal. And also interested to read on the Times today that thousands of Defence Forces personnel and hundreds of military vehicles have been deployed to assist in housing the record number of asylum seekers and Ukrainian refugees in recent years, new figures have shown. The Irish Daily Mail and their lead story again on what happened in Australia, but their angle on it, the hero who disarmed a gunman who was on an anti-Semitic rampage in Sydney that killed 16, has been praised for saving countless lives. And of course he was injured himself in that heroic attempt there, bringing down the shooter. The Irish Examiner, they call Bondi the 33rd county, and of course that's making reference to the amount of Irish people who are living in Sydney and around the Bondi Beach area. Also reading on the Examiner today, something we'll touch on in a few moments' time, the number of people in court for driving under the influence of drugs in the first 9 months of 2025 was 27% higher than the entirety of 2024. And also on the Examiner today, and something we will touch on a little later in the programme, the Taoiseach Micheál Martin's leadership of Fianna Fáil is under further pressure as politicians warn that the party's presidential election review could be fatal and resignation territory. So we'll be speaking to Deputy Ryan O'Mara on that and other things in a while. 083 311 3311. If you want to make a comment on any of those headlines, you can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, 3 people have died in 2 separate road crashes over the last couple of days in Tipperary. Superintendent Eddie Golden joins me in studio. Good morning to you, Eddie.
Good morning, Fran. Good morning, listeners.
And you know, when we describe it as a cloud looming over the county, that sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, Fran, it was a devastation on the roads of Tipperary over the weekend. And I suppose, firstly, we now have a number of families who have lost loved ones. I'm very mindful, speaking on the radio this morning, that things are very fresh. And that emotion is something which, I unfortunately have seen over the years with families, and the ripple effect of what a fatal traffic collision can do. I was working myself the weekend, and I suppose the first fatality, and a number of fatalities happened around 6 o'clock on Saturday, and I got the phone call, and obviously at that stage, all the emergency services rushed to the scene. They tried to do everything they can, and they did in all these cases, and I think the emergency service as well. I always think of the fire service, the ambulance service, and my own members when they're going to these scenes. So, unfortunately, in Killeens and Ballinolty, we 2 young men lost their lives. And again, a number of vehicles involved in that collision. And we, again, in that scene was managed, and all these road traffic collisions now are managed at a really high level, so that we can, obviously, long term it's to find out what's happened, but short term as well, is to put the necessary measures into place, and even to liaise with families as well, which we will be doing over the next number of days and weeks and going forward. So it's a very tragic scene that was faced the emergency services and everybody else up in Ballinolty. And then at about 1:15 I got a phone call for the second fatality, which happened on the bypass here in Clonmel. And again, a young gentleman lost his life there, and again, our sympathies go out to the families involved in all those cases, and in the Clonmel one as well. And again, it was, we go back into the same system that we have to make sure everything is done correctly, and make sure that we have all the necessary emergency services in place, and then just, I suppose, deal with the aftermath now. So this morning, for example, we'll be having conferences, one in Clonmel, one in Thurles, in relation to those traffic collisions, and trying to just piece together what happened, and also obviously look after the families and try and...
There's obviously a forensic aspect to that as well, to gather the information, I suppose, Eddie, yeah? Yes,
and I suppose that we had forensic collision investigators. We were fortunate we had assistance from outside the division for the Clonmel one, and we had our own forensic collision investigator in Ballinolty. So look, it's I suppose, these are the nuts and bolts of it as such. But look, when we go back to the human aspect of this, Fran, it's a tragic event which happened on the roads of Tipperary. What are the chances of it happening? The chances of it happening now are fairly high, not just in Tipperary, anywhere in the country at any stage now. And I suppose we have been advocating for road safety for so many years now. And just to park those 2 fatalities for a moment and talk in general about where we're going and where we're heading to. Our figures are up overall for this year, so fatalities and serious collisions, and
in the area, in Tipperary.
Well, overall nationally they're up,
yes.
Fran, unfortunately. In our own area, Clare, Tipperary, on Friday we had 8 now, and another 3 on top of that, so that's 11. So, the stats say one thing, but also there's the whole. When we look at the roads over the weekend as well, and you mentioned there about the drink driving. Figures being up, and sometimes I get this. Well, I do get it a lot. What are the guards doing? What are we not doing? Like, I'll give you a small example. Over the weekend, we had a large number of arrests for drink driving. In my own area, we had 6 on Friday night alone for drink driving. So, what does that say to me? That says that, first of all, on Garda Síochána are doing, our checkpoints that we say we're trying to do for campaigns and for every weekend. And that the breakdown of that actually was roads policing and the regular units contributed to that. So it wasn't just roads policing's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility in Garda Síochána to make sure we're trying to detect some of those.
Right, so that was 6 in what area specifically?
Just around Thurles.
Around Thurles?
Thurles itself, yeah. And then we had other arrests in the county as well. So,
okay.
But what that says to me is that we still have people who are taking a chance on drink driving or drug driving. And when we arrest somebody as well for drink driving, as I explained to this earlier, Fran, we do test for drugs as well, and the analysis comes back, and depending on which way it comes back, depends on...
And could I just add, Eddie, we're talking about the bigger picture here. We're not referencing anything that happened over the weekend.
This is totally separate to that, yeah.
Just to be clear about that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, look, overall then, when I look at the, on Friday, for example, road conditions extremely difficult. Over the weekend, extremely difficult conditions. And what I did find myself, even when I was on the roads, was that we had a number of collisions. They didn't end up in fatalities, but the potential was there for fatalities. We had a number of vehicles lost control, and the fire service were very busy out at these scenes. I passed one on the road between Rose Green and Clarehan as I was going between scenes yesterday it was. So again, we've people that are just not driving to the conditions. We've people that And when we look at your vehicles, are they roadworthy? Are the tyres, correct? When we're talking about that surface water, it only takes a moment for you to lose control. And then after that, you're a passenger in your own vehicle, whether you have a steering wheel in your hand or not. And where you end up,
you're not in control.
You're not in control.
Yeah.
And then when I look at the number of pedestrians and vulnerable road users that we have out there, cyclists, e-scooter users now as well, and people are they oblivious to the danger? It's hard to know, Fran, but there's no way you should be oblivious to the danger now on the roads. It's obvious to me, it's obvious to everybody that the roads are quite dangerous places to be in. Unfortunately, it was Tipperary this weekend, and there was a number of other collisions around the country as well. We're heading in now to a crunch period of time where we're going to have a lot of volume of traffic moving. A lot of shopping to be done, a lot of people whose minds are distracted with a whole heap
caught
of
up
stuff
with
going
the
on.
whole celebration of Christmas and all
Yeah,
that.
and I think that is part of it as well, Fran. I find people are busy doing a lot of things, and it's very difficult for you to focus on the task in hand, which may be driving, it could be cycling, it could be other activities on the road. So my appeal this morning is very clear, is for everybody, so everybody can have a positive effect on road safety. That is the message. I'm doing what I can do, you're doing what you can do, but if everybody doesn't take that responsibility, and people will say, oh, there's an element out there who are reckless, and they are, and we're trying to police that elements of society in all aspects, not just roads policing side of things. But after a weekend like this, we're having the conversation now, Fran, and it's very raw, and it's a very real situation that we've families in Tipperary grieving, and extended families and friends. But that message then, at times, as time goes on, we just need to be consistent, and we need to keep those messages out there, and that's what we're trying to do here this morning as well, just to appeal to people to be safe out there.
It might be worth keeping in mind as well that 20,000 people went before the courts for drink driving in the last 5 years, for example, Eddie. And drug driving offences, as I said, that headline on the Examiner today, 27% higher in the first 9 months of 2025. They're stark figures, aren't they?
They are, and they are contributing to the overall fatalities and serious collisions and life-changing injuries that we find when we arrive at these scenes. And both psychological and physical injuries last for so many years, and maybe last forever. So,
that's interesting. I mean, we hear about the fatalities, and God knows they're tragic, but we don't often talk about the life-changing injuries that you're making reference to there,
Yeah, no, they are real injuries, know, and they're things that people's lives are never the same again. They may survive a collision and be totally innocent in that, just minding their own business, and then something else happens, the collision happens, and unfortunately they become the victim then, because they, due to somebody else's recklessness, or maybe it might be something small. It could be just that moment of lapse of concentration. It can be looking at that mobile phone. It can be, distracted driving in any way, that the car drifts over the white line, there's a collision, and then after that, nobody can rewind the clock. I remember looking at some of those Australian ads, and they're really powerful, and they rewind it back, and there's one in particular that stands out to me, of a car coming out from a junction, and then when they wind it back, the two drivers going, oh, I didn't mean to hit you, and I didn't mean to be here, and I'm so sorry. But those conversations don't happen when the collision happens. It's over then. Nobody can wind back the clock. So, look, it's something which this morning I'm coming on, Fran. I appreciate the opportunity again just to sympathise with the families involved. And also, can I just acknowledge the work by the emergency services, the fire service, the ambulance service, who absolutely supporting Garda Síochána over this period and all during the year. And I think we were talking off air as well, about welfare. And I think even for my own members there, we'd have a number of members who have been at both scenes over the weekend, and we do have a welfare protocol which we never had before.
Do you? Because I can't imagine. I mean, that must take a toll. I mean, if you're going out and witnessing such tragedy, it does take a toll, I guess, Eddie.
Yeah, it's something which you never get used to, Fran. I don't care how much experience you have. But it's something that we have to manage. We have to be professional. All the emergency services are as in Tipperary, are at a very high level of professionalism, and we do our jobs to the best of our ability. And yeah, is it something that it's not everybody has to see those scenes, it's not everybody has to deal with those scenes, but look, it's something that we are mindful of. And this morning I'll be mindful of my own members and the members from Garda Síochána in all areas, and all superintendents will be, and chiefs, so we'll be looking at making sure those people get a phone call, and at least we try and just manage some of that
to support them,
that they can support them in any way. So look, it's been a dark weekend, as you said, to start off, Fran, but I'm hopeful that, look, if everybody just takes a moment now, reset between this and the new year and into the new year, if we could just take a little bit more time on the roads, if we could just slow down that little bit more, if we could take the necessary precautions when it comes to walking or cycling or e-scooters or whatever mode of transport you have, make yourself visible. We've fog now for the next couple of days coming in, so the weather conditions are changing.
Yeah.
And I think people think it's the middle of summer. They just think there's nothing that can happen. Even yesterday, for example, the car I was in, you can aquaplane quite easily. There was a lot of standing water, and if you don't reduce your speed correctly, you're going to increase your chances of having those collisions.
All right, and of course, once again, while the victims haven't been named as yet, but condolences indeed to the families out there. We can't imagine what they're going through this morning. Eddie, thanks for your time this morning. Superintendent Eddie Golden with us. We'll take a break, back with more in just a few moments.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back to Tipp Today. I'm joined on the line now by North Tipperary Fianna Fáil Deputy Ryan O'Mara. Good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, Fran. Good morning to your listeners. How are you?
I'm well, Ryan, but it's been a tragic weekend on Tipperary's roads. I know you want to pass on condolences to families out there, Ryan.
Absolutely. I think it's only right with how shook the communities across Tipperary have been at the news over the weekend, Saturday evening, Saturday night. The loss of a number of young lives on our roads is incredibly difficult, and well, it's an easy thing to say, but it is improper to acknowledge that at this time of year it makes it even more difficult for families and communities to lose loved ones in such a tragic and sudden manner. And I know the Gardaí are doing great work on it. The first responders have an incredibly difficult job when it comes to calling to scenes like this, and we think of them too. But I guess just to acknowledge the work of the Gardaí and the response units as they continue their investigations.
The other tragedy, of course, at least 16 people at this stage killed and more than 40 wounded when gunmen fired on that Jewish celebration on Bondi Beach in Australia. Ryan, is it imperative that we begin to temper our rhetoric now and begin to separate the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu from the Jewish people and many Israelis that do not support his actions in Gaza? Is that vital at this point?
Oh, 100%. Benjamin Netanyahu needs to answer for his crimes, the genocide he is committing. I think he needs to be brought to The Hague to answer for those. He's a terrifying and warmongering individual that has inflicted untold damage to thousands upon thousands of lives, but he is not representative of an entire people or an entire religion. A religion and a people that have suffered tremendously over many, many years. I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu is even reflective of his country. He's reflective of an extremist far-right government that is hate-filled and murderous. But that is not to say that he's reflective of all of the people of Israel, and he most definitely is not reflective of all Jewish people across the world, in Ireland, in Australia or anywhere else.
And we're reading now Gardaí increasing security, Ryan, at Jewish events after what happened on Bondi Beach. And there is a lot of fear out there now, isn't there?
There is, and like two of the people that were killed that have been reported this morning, I see one was a Holocaust survivor and the other a 10-year-old girl. it's understandable why people, just because of their religion, would live in fear of acts like that. When something like that happens, it was an act of hatred. And listening to the reports and listening to people that were around Bondi Beach at the time, it was an act of terror. You can understand exactly what an act of terror is when you hear the terror in their voices when they talk about it. I mean, I saw one video on social media of that heroic individual that tackled, I think, the younger assailant. Oh no, it was the older assailant. He tackled, got the gun.
Yeah, it was
him.
the father.
I saw other individuals going into gardens and hiding in houses. And as soon as the reports came in on my phone the other evening, you immediately think of all the Irish people there. I mean, on Christmas morning, which is coming up very quickly, when I open my phone and on Instagram, I'll see countless local people, Irish people, young people, generally on Bondi Beach for Christmas Day. So it strikes home here, knowing that we could know someone that's caught up in it too. But to Jewish people out there that feel a sense of fear and terror at being attacked just because of their religion when they're innocent people like any of the rest of us, that is wrong, and it has no place in our society.
We're hearing that the Jim Gavin report is now close to completion, Ryan, but reading in the Examiner today that the Taoiseach, your party leader, Micheál Martin, his leadership of Fianna Fáil is now under further pressure as politicians warn that the party's presidential election review could be fatal, and they're saying resignation territory as well. What do you make of that?
Well, I wish someone would send me on the review that all these people are commenting on at the moment. As far as I know, the review hasn't been published. I want to see it. I wanted to see it 2 weeks ago. I wanted to see it a month ago, but it took the time it took, and that's where we are now. But I find all of this speculation around the report and leaks coming out deeply, deeply frustrating. I have a right to see the report as a parliamentary party member, and all of my colleagues do, so that we can actually comment on it. It's impossible to comment on something we haven't seen yet, and I don't think it does any good to the party. I think it only does damage to have anonymous comments in media talking like that when we've yet to see what's actually in it. I would have said to you previously on it that I would hold my judgment until I see the review. That's not to say that I haven't spoken up in parliamentary party meetings. And actually at a Fianna Fáil meeting last Monday night in Thurles, the Thurles Court of Counter meeting, which I have to say was one of the best attended meetings I've seen in a long time in the Court of Counter, we had a bit of a discussion on this, and I gave my view very clearly to the members that I'll comment on it when I feel it's right, but I won't comment on speculation. And it's very, very frustrating to see yet another day of speculation in media. And part of that, Fran, and it's not having a good media at all, part of it is because of how long it's been drawn out at this stage.
Well, that's down to the parties. I would imagine it's down to Micheál Martin to some degree, Ryan.
It's how long the process was, how detailed it was, and to be fair, I know the members of the parliamentary party that were on the review, and I engaged with it myself, obviously. And they've done a huge amount of work. They've put in an enormous amount of time, possibly sometimes away from their constituents, away from their constituencies, to get this done for the party. So I know from talking to them, without them telling me what's in the report, but I know from talking to them how much work they put in. And it took longer than we wanted, but it had to be done right too. And obviously there were legal issues around it, and making sure that before a report was published, it had gone through the proper checks and processes too.
It's now emerged, though, seemingly, that 4 days before Fianna Fáil TDs, your colleagues and senators were asked, some say pressurised into choosing Jim Gavin as their candidate, that high-ranking officials in the party were contacted about concerns over their prospective nominee. Many of your colleagues have already argued that they should have been told of any concerns about a candidate, whether big or small, Ryan, before voting took place. I mean, do you go along with that?
Oh, something of that nature, absolutely. And if that's what the report says, then I'll be questioning that.
Yeah, but seemingly the dogs in the streets know that the report is going to report that.
Yeah, because of the leaks coming out, and that brings me back to my original point that at this stage we need to see the report. We were told at last week's parliamentary party meeting, and again reported in media from the meeting, that we'd have the report this week. So I want to see it, and I want to read it and see if those points are in it.
Right. If they are in it, it's very damning for Micheál Martin, isn't it?
Look, I'll say again, I'm very, very reluctant to talk on speculation about something until I see it. And that's not to answer your question, Fran. Please don't get me wrong on that. It's because at all points I've tried to approach this process properly, out of respect for colleagues within the parliamentary party, but also our ordinary membership. And that's what I said at our meeting last Monday night in Thurles, was that I'm not going out speculating or throwing further fuel on a fire. I want to see what the report says so I can comment on it then. I think that's just the most appropriate way to conduct business, particularly when it's an internal party matter. I think there's a way you can go about it, and to me, since the entire process started, I've never been one running to media giving anonymous comments, and I think that's wrong too.
Can I ask you about something else? Because under 16s in Australia are now banned from using major social media services, including TikTok, X and Facebook and the like. They can't set up new accounts, and existing profiles will be deactivated. I know that you've published a survey around parenting in the digital age. When I say you, I mean Fianna Fáil. Is a ban like the Australian one on the cards, do you think, Ryan?
I heard the Minister talking recently, and he said it was in reserve. And I think he's taking the right approach at the moment. So I guess when I became Fianna Fáil spokesperson in education and youth, this was one of the areas I wanted to particularly focus on. Number one, I suppose, from the damage that is being done to young people by access to social media and certain technologies. And in all I'm about to say might be quite negative at points, I'm not taking from the positives that are out there around both social media and technology, because I don't think that can be lost in this conversation. It's too important. But from my point of view, I look at younger people and I worry about the work of algorithms and the way that they target young men, often with toxic masculinity or far-right ideology, and at the same time how they target young women about how they should look or dress or body image issues. And it is doing profound damage to young people when it comes to concentration levels, simply brain rot, distraction within classrooms, distraction at home, cyberbullying, even deepfake AI imagery and videos, technology at the rate it is advancing, and the unfettered access that young people can have to it across violence, intimidation, misinformation, disinformation, and sexual imagery and sexual violence, is doing profound damage and has to be targeted and young people protected online. So within Fianna Fáil, we did an online survey, as you said, parenting in the digital age, to get the views of parents, where parents feel they're at and what supports they need or what their views on the issue are. But we also, which was very important to be engaged with young people, and we held a workshop in Leinster House with representative groups of young people to get their views on social media and technology. My view is that an under-16s ban sounds like a silver bullet if you're a politician going to go out and sound like you're doing something. I'm far from convinced it'll work.
It's going to be hard to police that, isn't it?
Very, very difficult to police, and also very difficult to know what sites are included and what aren't. And actually, I might give you a quote, which I read into the Dáil record, so you don't need to worry that I'm telling you what I said on the Dáil record, and it's what one young person gave us in our workshop. And they were talking about the Roblox game. And they said, I used to use Roblox and I do have an account, but I stopped using it or buying Roblox because of their predator issues and the way that they handle those types of situations. Now, under the Australian ban, Roblox is not banned. It still has access. So what is social media? What is gaming? Are we talking about phones? Are we talking about tablets, computers, laptops, smart TVs? It's so complicated that an under-16s ban, I don't think, fully encompasses what needs to be done. But in my view, it also gives the get-out-of-jail-free card to social media companies to not have to regulate their content to any extent. That if we make a complaint and say, a young person saw something violent or saw sexual imagery online, well, their answer can simply be, well, they're not supposed to be online. We don't have to worry about that. And I think it takes too much responsibility away from social media companies that have an awful lot more work to do.
Some of those findings from that online safety workshop, though, were kind of frightening, Ryan. I mean, participants were on average 6 years old when first using a smart device. Some were as young as 4. Yeah, and other very useful information was question number 13 in the survey, where we asked parents how confident they feel in understanding the online world that their children are a part of.
And when it came to very confident, it was slightly less than 10%. Now, there was over 40% somewhat confident, but I think it shows the challenges that parents face too. And we have to understand that the parents cannot be expected to understand or keep up with every form of technology. Like I mentioned Roblox there to you. At 30 years of age, I only know a little bit about Roblox because of my work in studying this area. It's not something I grew up with. So technology is advancing way beyond us. So we need to look at how we are supporting parents to understand the online world as well. And I actually went to a talk in Portroe National School recently. It was between Portroe, Burgess and Yahalara schools came together. And it was presented by the Gen Free initiative to talk to parents around these exact issues, what exactly is going on online, what their children are facing, what the threats are, but also, I suppose, what parents can do to help them and protect them and kind of make parents aware of what's actually going on out there. And that has to be a huge part of the work in government as well. I think a ban is so simple that it doesn't actually tackle the issue.
And there is an element, I mean, I don't want to be totally pessimistic that anything can be done about this, but the genie is out of the bottle in a lot of this stuff, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And look, I know I was on to you as well around the time that the AI chatbots came out, that Twitter or X had released their own version of it that was a highly sexualized account that children could access to. Like, particularly with the advancement in AI now, things are moving so rapidly. There is a lot of this conversation, Fran, that will have to happen at EU level too. There's no point in pretending otherwise, but we do have a particular responsibility in Ireland with the location of so many of these tech companies here, with Commission the Man here, the Data Protection Office here. I think we have to lead in this where we can as well. I have seen in recent times President Macron in France talking much, I suppose, with much stronger language around this issue too, which is very welcome because, as you said, the genie is out of the bottle in terms of the damage being done to young people. But we have to think about how we're going to tackle this because there is untold damage being done to some young people. And in saying all of that, like I said at the beginning, there are so many good sides to social media, to advanced connectivity across the globe, to what technology can do for young people. And technology is the future in so many ways, the future of so many jobs, the future of our economy. So we have to think about digital literacy as well and making sure young people are educated and trained properly in how to use it too.
Before I let you go, just briefly, can I talk to you about that extension of the 3-year nitrates derogation for Ireland, giving farmers, I suppose, some kind of certainty, but there are conditional changes for farmers in there.
There are, yeah. And look, I suppose it has been a priority of government over the last year, particularly since the election, that we retain the nitrates directive. And it is good news that we're holding it for 3 years. It gives certainty to farmers for another 3 years that the derogation is here and staying at current levels. It is tied into the Habitats Directive, and that is going to come with certain conditionality. But up until 2028, we have the derogation as it stands, and we are the only country in Europe with the derogation. There's over 7,700 farm families at the moment in derogation in this country. It is obviously a particularly big issue in the area that I represent in North Tipperary, North West Kilkenny, across South Tipperary too, across this region with so many farmers in derogation. And it gives some certainty. And I do acknowledge as well the farming organisations, IFA and ICMSA, coming out and welcoming it cautiously in the sense that, yes, we have the 3 years, but what is the guarantee beyond that? And that's going to come down to the work that farmers are already doing, what they will do to protect our waterways, but also how government...
And that's the point, though, isn't it, Ryan? Because we've huge issues with our water quality.
Absolutely, and I said it both in welcoming the derogation being extended, but also when talking about housing recently in the Dáil, that there is work to be done by farmers, and they are doing it. We're seeing the TAMS grants come in for the building of slurry storage, the planning exemptions going through the Dáil for slurry storage. But on the other side of it, while farmers have a job to do and rural Ireland have a job to do, there's also the area of wastewater treatment plants as well that are doing massive damage to our waterways at the moment. So when it comes to water quality, and there is a cabinet subcommittee set up on this issue, it is both on the farming side of things and also on the wastewater treatment plant side of things, with Ishgate and having an awful lot of work to do as well. But it is an extremely important issue and it has to be done right. If we don't protect our water quality, if we don't improve our water quality, we won't have the nitrates derogation, but it will pay for it in so many other ways as well in relation to our environment. So it's proven that farmers are doing the work, particularly farmers in derogation. The standards they meet are higher than most others. around the world, let alone in Ireland. But they have to be supported for the next 3 years to continue that work as well. And that, particularly in the catchment areas, will mean lower levels to a certain extent of fertiliser, but also further buffer strips from waterways as well.
All right, Ryan, good to talk to you today, and thanks for your time. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Deputy Ryan O'Mara, Fianna Fáil TD for North Tipperary there. 1800 938 007. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
Now, because of the tragedies on our roads over the past couple of days, Seesaw is extending its opening hours to offer support to the community. The founder of Seesaw, Joe Leahy, joins me now. Joe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran.
And you know, we described it at the very top of the programme as a dark cloud over the county. It certainly describes the feeling in Tipperary, doesn't it, Joe?
It does indeed, yes. Here we are again, visited, Fran, with more tragedies, you know. And let me say at the very beginning, Fran, our sympathies from everybody goes out to the families, the friends, work colleagues, sporting colleagues, neighbours, and all involved, you know, the emergency service and everybody that's involved in these terrible tragedies, you know. They're not easy. They're not easy to come across. They're not easy to deal with. And as other people have said, you know, the aftermath is something that we all have to try and help others and cope with as best everybody can.
And of course, as you said, I mean, we've experienced tragedies in the past in Tipperary. I presume this could reignite trauma for people who've gone through that in the past, Joe.
Absolutely, Fran. And you know, while it certainly does, Fran, and the mind is a strange old beast of a thing. You know, the mind works in strange ways, and we overthink a hell of a lot. And while this is a great time, you know, for children, for young people, for, you know, families with loved ones coming home and all that type of thing, and travelling and presents and joyous and all that, it's still to me, it's a difficult time for a lot of people because they have an awful lot of time spent on their own. They spend, you know, what am I thinking of? You automatically think of the person that's missing from around the table, and that's what the mind goes back to all the time. You know, we can't help that. It's what happens. So as a result, it can be a lonely time, and for some, thankfully not for everybody, but for some, and that is where people like Seesaw and the Samaritans and everybody else, that's where they come in and play their part for us. We're there, and we're there offering and willing to help people.
Now, you're extending your opening hours. What are they, Joe?
Yeah, well, we have our usual opening hours, Fran, in Nina, in Tiptown and in Clonmel, stand-up. They're all on social media. But our extra opening hours are tomorrow night, Tuesday the 16th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m, and on Wednesday the 17th, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 24 William Street in Clonmel, and the air code is E91 NX34. 24 William Street in Clonmel. And everybody is welcome, Fran. In any circumstance, just give us a call, where there'll be 3 or 4 people there to meet them, sit down, have a cup of tea and have a chat, and we'll listen to their stories. It doesn't matter what it's about, we'll listen.
And of course, listening is the operative word there, isn't it? I mean, it's not about giving advice, I suppose, Joe. It's about listening, isn't it?
It is about listening people and listening, Fran, sorry, and it's listening to people, and it's about people, you know, getting the story off their chest and listening to them, you know. And we go back to all these old sayings that we've heard down through the years, and, you know, for years and years, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. That might be a bit rich because everybody goes through their grieving and all that, but at the same time, it does help to talk. Like, the biggest problem people have is if they go into just total silence, numbness, and don't talk. That creates bigger problems. So it always helps, Fran, to talk, and we're there to listen, and we will listen. We're non-judgmental. We're all volunteers. We're all trained. There's no issue at all, and we will listen to anybody in total confidence.
And, I mean, we have the addition of the dreadful news that we all heard over the weekend. But I'm just thinking, Christmas in general, as you alluded to there, is a difficult time for people, Joe.
It is indeed, Fran. It's a worrying time for some people as well, Fran, you know. So, like, there are people out there, like, who have lost, you know, relations along the way. There's other people who have lost contact with relations. They don't know whether they're dead or alive. There the tragedy of people who are missing from home have never been found. They have no graves to go to. They have nothing. They have no finality to the journey of life. And some of those things, some of these are very, very difficult to deal with. You know, like an awful lot of people, we just get on about the business and we go out and we do this and, you know, what are you having for Christmas Day? Having people calling. That's the normal run of the mill. But there are another huge section of people who are out there, Fran. Another section of people, Fran, are people that are living alone.
Yes.
You know, loneliness is a terrible thing. Like 24 hours is a hell of a long time if you're living on your own with absolutely nobody to talk to. You know, and that's where these services like ours come into play. We're there. We're there for the people, you know, and we don't mind. That's what we set ourselves up to do, and that's what we're there for.
Right. I presume that first step, and you've spoken to me about this in the past, that first step over the threshold of seesaw, it can be a difficult one for people.
It can be, and I suppose this comes back, Fran, to the overthinking, you know. We constantly overthink about whether we should or whether we shouldn't, instead of just going and doing it.
Yeah.
You know, just say, geez, I'll go down to them, sure, I can't be any worse than them now. Just go down, walk in the door's open, come in. That's it. No explaining, there's no problem. We don't ask people about their private business, we don't ask them at all, we just listen to them. If people want to tell us their story, they'll tell us their story. They'll feel better. We can signpost them to help in any way. We can offer free counselling to people, Fran. And, you know, there's no cost to anybody. Just come in. That's what we're there for. That's why we set ourselves up that way. And that is why the people like of Tipperary and surrounding counties have been extremely good financially to us, as well as everything else, Fran. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the people who have helped us. And as well as that, let me take the opportunity, Fran, to thank our volunteers as well, who have been absolutely steadfast in the cause of Seesaw.
All right, Joe. Well, look, if I don't see you before Christmas, happy Christmas to you and congrats on all the wonderful work that you do. Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Fran. The same to you and all the lads and Tipp FM.
Good morning to you. That's Joe Leahy there, the founder of Seesaw. 1800 938 007. Glad to be joined now by Fine Gael councillor John Fitzgerald. Good morning to you, John.
Morning, Fran.
I know you want to pass on your condolences to the families of those victims of the road tragedies over the last few days, John.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a terrible time for the families affected by these road accidents here in Clonmel on the N24 and also in Killinall and Ballinonty. So it's been an awful weekend of carnage on the roads. Sadly, terrible time of the year for that as well. It resonates worse, I think, this time of the year. But it's awful at any time of the year. And it's just dreadful. And I want to compliment the emergency services in Tipperary for their response. The first responders I spoke to, Garda Síochána yesterday. And it is a very sad time now for people as we face the days ahead, which are involved in funerals and so on. So yes. It's a tough time. My condolences and prayers go to the families who have been affected.
And we all pass on our condolences and our sympathies, John, but it's hard to even imagine what families go through when they get that knock on the door or that phone call.
It must be awful. And I've seen it all through 2025. There has been a number of occasions, and we had some dreadful occasions here in Clonmel in the past. I can't imagine, as a parent myself of teenagers and so on, what it must be like to get that call or to see a Garda at the door bringing this news to you. It must be something that just is outside your comprehension in normal day-to-day thinking. You know, that it's amazing. I think what does happen in communities when this does happen is that people huddle together and, people... The emergency services, first responders, as I say, Gardaí, clergy and so on, they're the people that come into their own in these situations, and they make life some bit bearable, but it's never the norm again. And I think it resonates worse this time of the year, as I said already.
Yeah, I remember speaking to you when Brona English was killed in that road accident. She was a friend of your daughter's, I know, John, and it comes towards your own door when you come across situations like that, you know. It's
absolutely. We've been throughout this year, we've mourned Brona. She was a lovely person who we knew well and whose parents we know well, and brothers and sisters and so on. And it has come back to, you think of her when other things like this happen as well. So, yeah, I do. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year on the roads, and it's been something that, we won't be sorry to see the back of 2025 for. And it's tougher for the families that are affected, but it did definitely. My own daughter's still very, very, very bereaved by her friend being not around for this Christmas, but she's very, very close to her, I think, in the way she talks to me anyway. So,
and I was making the point to Joe Leahy that tragedies then for a lot of people who have suffered in the past losing loved ones, it brings it all up again for them, doesn't it?
It does. Unfortunately, where the numbers on the roads are still too high, too high, the number of road deaths, and there's something that there's more we can do. There has to be more we can do to avoid this and to make it safer and to make up public awareness about the dangers in cars and so on. So I suppose it's not enough to talk after the event. It's something we should be constantly aware of, and if it's in your constant conscience, it's helping you. It's helping people in society prevent worse carnage. So it's just a thing I think that has to stay alive in the public consciousness.
All right, John. Well, we appreciate your time this morning, and thanks for coming on with us, John. Thank you.
All right, Fran. Thank you.
Good morning to you. Councillor John Fitzgerald speaking to us there. 1800-938-007. Now, since I spoke to Superintendent Eddie Golden this morning, a lot of people are on to us about the condition of the roads as well. Many people on to us about that, and many people on to us about and we keep hearing about this, the LED lighting. And most of our listeners who would be concerned about that, making the point that something has to be done about it where legislation is concerned or the like, because we're being blinded on the roads, we're hearing this morning. Another listener wants to say something needs to be done in the square. In Thurles, people are weaving in and out between lanes, having two arrows at the top of the square pointing towards the bottom of the square, plus people are trying to manoeuvre around cars, etc., double parked near junctions. And outside of the bank, nobody takes heed of the double yellow lines on Parnell Street, and they still park there. Well, I know that former Superintendent Willie Leahy took me on a bit of a sort of a driving course around the square in Thurles. It helped greatly, but I know I was in Thurles over the weekend. And again, you're right. There's an element of chaos to it in terms of people not being certain about where they're going. And even if you've done a course, and even if you seem to know your way around the square, other people don't. So it's a little bit chaotic there, I have to admit. You're right where that is concerned. 083 311 3311. News and information's coming up.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Paul. Welcome back to the second hour of Tipp Today. Now, staying with the loss of life of those young people on the roads of Tipperary over the last few days. Sharon was on to us from Cloughjordan. She says, my sympathies to the families, friends and loved ones, Fran, of those so sadly killed on Tipperary's roads over the weekend. As a mother of a boy who is also a tragedy of our roads in Tipperary, my heart breaks for what the families are going through. The knock on the door is something you don't recover from. There's help out there, and Seesaw and the Irish Road Victims Association are amazing. Our roads are just so dangerous, says Sharon in Cloughjordan. Another listener on to say, I'll never recover from being hit while driving by a drunk driver. It's changed my life completely. I'm so upset to hear about all of those road accidents, and I can't look forward to Christmas because of my family and all the people driving over the Christmas period. I'll be so concerned and worried. I hope people heed Superintendent Eddie Golden. It destroys so many lives, and I hope all will be safe over Christmas. 083 311 3311. Now, the Association of Catholic Priests has expressed its deep disappointment at the Vatican's December 4th decision, once again rejecting the ordination of women as deacons. I'm glad to be joined now by Father Tony Flannery of the ACP. Good morning to you, Father Tony.
Good morning, Fran.
And lovely to talk to you again. Thank you for coming on with us. As I said in the intro there, your organisation deeply disappointed by this decision, particularly considering that, you know, where lay Catholics are concerned, overwhelmingly supporting the ordination of female deacons and indeed female priests.
That's correct, yes. And also, I suppose, Fran, the fact that, I've been involved in working for church reform for about 30 years, but recent years have been good with Pope Francis, and there was a new openness, and then there was the synodality movement, giving a voice to the people. It seemed as if we were going places and things were going to happen. And then here we have it again, this little group in the Vatican just issue a diktat saying, sorry, nothing, no change. And we're back to square one. I hope we're not, but it looks like we are. It's disappointing.
And you know, I was reading through some of the reasoning behind this, and some of the language, I think, Father Tony, I think you might agree with me, is rather unfortunate, because they speak about the masculinity of Christ, and therefore the masculinity of those who receive holy orders. It's not accidental, but it's an integral part of sacramental identity, preserving the divine order of salvation in Christ. And that's dismissing so many people, isn't it?
That is quite extraordinary. I'm delighted to see you picking up on that, Fran. It's fair dues to you for spotting it. That is just so out of touch with modern life. Like, they're going back about 150 years in their theology when they're speaking language like that. And to say nowadays that you need a certain physiological makeup to be able to represent Jesus, it is just preposterous. When I read that, I said, God, they can't possibly still be believing that. But apparently they are. Yeah, so where do you go when you're dealing with people like that, Fran? It's quite difficult, really. My worry is the impact this will have on women generally. I know as of now, a lot of women, particularly younger, but also older women, are just losing faith in the church because the whole notion of inequality, treating women as second-class citizens, that's no longer a viable way for an institution to act. And this is going to reinforce that. So I'm afraid there'll be an increased exodus of people from the church as a result of this.
And even from a pragmatic point of view, it was only last week on the programme we were speaking about the situation between Waterford and Tipperary, and parishes having to amalgamate because of the lack of priests. So even from a pragmatic point of view, Father Tony, it's strange.
Exactly. It makes no sense at all. And then the policy seems to be to bring in priests from foreign countries. And again, like a good friend of mine is a woman who feels she's had a call to all her life, and for the likes of her to see men being brought in from foreign countries to do something that she feels she's perfectly capable of doing, it's all just it's going in the wrong direction, I'm afraid, and it's sad to say it. Now, there's one caveat to that, Fran. Leo hasn't commented yet.
Yes, yeah.
And I'd be hopeful. Now, he did give permission for the statement to be published, all right. Whether that means that he approves of it, I don't know, but we're waiting to see what he will say.
Yeah, but with respect to the Holy Father, he has sat on this report since September, I think, has he?
Yes, and of course it was sat on for a couple of years before that. Francis was, I'd say, afraid of making a decision on it, and he kept sort of pushing it, as we said, kicking the can down the road, setting up another commission and another study and that sort of thing. The big issue for the church at the moment, I think, Fran, is the idea that there has to be the same practice and the same teaching right across the world. Whereas what we need is different sections of the church to be given the freedom to move in their own direction. Like, for instance, let some of the countries in the developed world, say like Ireland, for instance, let the Irish bishops come together and start ordaining women as deacons. Now, the fact that they're not doing it in Africa because the culture there is so dramatically different shouldn't prevent the Irish church from doing it. That seems to me to be the obvious way forward. But popes are terrified of splits and divisions in the church.
But isn't that the big fear, that there would be a split in the church then between maybe a more liberal side and the conservative church?
Yeah, that's what worries them. But the reality, Fran, is we have that split already.
Yeah.
In reality, the people walking away from the church, that's the split. And that's the worst situation. So, I don't know, I'm hopeful.
Have any of our own bishops, Father Tony, spoken out about this?
Not a word out of them. And again, we in the association commented on that. I think that's a pity. I've attended a synodality meeting. I don't know how clued in the general listeners are to the whole synodality movement that's been going on there for the last 5 or 6 years. And I've attended lots of meetings at which the issue of women in the church was openly discussed and very freely discussed. And all the bishops were there participating in it. And still, when this happens, none of them got up to express reservations about it or to make a comment on how women might be feeling. I'd be very disappointed with that. So if Kieran is listening, I'd say, Kieran, come on. Kieran is a good man. And
so you're calling on the Archbishop to speak out on this, aren't you?
I'd love if he did. Now, I don't want... maybe it's unfair to pick out Kieran because I think he's one of the more open-minded and better bishops that we've got in this country. But it would be a great opportunity for him to at least acknowledge publicly the hurt that this decision is causing to Catholic women around the country and in this diocese.
You see, people might look to Father Tony Flannery as well and say, well, there's a good reason to stay quiet because you were sanctioned, Tony, for speaking out in favour of female priests, and I think you're still suspended, are you?
I am indeed.
And is that 13 years now, is it? 13?
It's 14.
Is it 14?
2012. Well, yeah, well, it's almost 14 years now. And that's the way I'll be 79 next month. So I'm not expecting to be back into ministry in this life. Yeah. And the women's issue was a big part of the reason why I was suspended, yeah. But that was before Francis came in. If I had managed to hang on for one more year, I wouldn't have been suspended at all. Because as soon as Francis came in 2013, he got rid of all that whole nonsense. But still, my suspension remains.
But the suspension remains. And could I ask you about why did that suspension remain when, you know, quite a few people then over the last 14 years have spoken out on this? Why?
Oh, that you're absolutely correct about that, Fran. Any of the things that I was suspended for have become common in the discussions and the debates within the church now. So at this stage, far from being a radical. I'm very much middle of the road in my views, I think, because, as I said, the women's issue, priesthood, all of that is being widely discussed. And the problems that, and I wasn't the only one, there were a good few others, the problems that we were highlighting have all come to be very much part of the church nowadays. So there you go. But I don't know. A lot of people have spoken to popes and spoken to bishops, and no Irish bishop has publicly, in 14 years, has publicly supported me and asked for me to be restored to ministry. Again, I'd be disappointed about that because I know a lot of them, and a lot of them are very good men, but they're very cautious and afraid to stick their heads above the parapet.
How do you manage to be good-humoured about that? And, you know, because, I mean, this is your life. Was your vocation that was taken, well, a portion of it taken from you, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It's a long time. It's 14 years, or almost 14 years now, and you learn to live with it. And in a lot of ways, you see, I have been, in the last 14 years, very involved in the church reform movement, both in Ireland, but also internationally. And I've gone to many countries and giving talks on church reform and all of that. So that has absorbed my energy and my interest and given me a reason to live. Now I'm not doing much of that anymore because I'm gone too old for that. There have been times, Fran, to be honest, when it really I struggled and lonely and isolated. I'm a redemptorist, but I found that from once this happened, I could no longer live in a redemptorist monastery because I'd always been stuck in the middle of all the work that was going on, and then suddenly to be living in a monastery and not to be able to be involved in anything that was happening, the whole thing was in my face. So I've actually lived outside the system for the last 14 years. I'm living in Newport in County Tipperary with a good friend of mine. So we will get on with our life.
Yeah,
that's about all I can say.
It just sounds desperately sad that you would be isolated from your community like that, and you know, I think it's awful.
It's partly my own decision.
Yeah.
Because I just emotionally I wasn't able to cope with being there all the time, and like I was big into the preaching and mission giving and all that sort of thing, and while it was the Vatican that dictated what happened, the actual sentence that was imposed on me, the suspension that was imposed on me, was imposed by the Redemptorists. Now, I don't fault them in the sense that they were threatened that if they didn't, the Vatican would sanction them. But psychologically for me, to be living in the monastery with the people who suspended me and not being part of everything that was going on around, for my own mental and emotional health, it was better to be outside the system. And there was no freedom in that time. When you stand out, I found myself like I spent all my life as a preacher, and in spite of yourself, your thinking is curtailed by that, because you have to stand up in front of the people and you don't want to be preaching heresy or whatever. But once I was outside the system, I found I was much freer to begin to read more widely and think differently. And say, for instance, now, the God that I believe in now, or the divine, I prefer to use that word, is very different to what I believed in 14 years ago. So my thinking has changed enormously in the 14 years, and it's been good in that sense too, you know.
That's just fascinating indeed. Have you made up your mind on Pope Leo yet, or is it still early days, Father Tony?
Still early days, Fran, and there are sort of contrary signals coming out, I'd be hopeful that. And I liked really, he had a real go at Trump there.
He did indeed, yeah.
And it was great to see him doing that. The more people that have a go at Trump, the more you like it. Generally, I'm hopeful of him, but how he's going to handle the whole synodality movement. Because the synodality movement is important, because fundamentally what that is trying to do is to change the whole governing structure of the church and to give a voice to the people and to take, maybe it's unfair to put it like this, but to take the power away from the clerical church. And it is very important that that would succeed. So, and I know he's in his talks and speeches and that he seems to be very supportive of it. But whether he will take the necessary actions, and this one that we're talking about is very much part of it, only time will tell. But I am hopeful, because basically I like him, and I like the things he says most of the time, which isn't too bad.
Well, Father Tony, I always look forward to talking to you, and thank you for your time. And a happy Christmas to you, Father Tony. Thank you.
And the same to yourself and to your listeners. Thank you. Lovely talking to you, Fran. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye to you. And that's Father Tony Flannery of the Association of Catholic Priests speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. Now it's time to have a look at what's happening globally. Glad to be joined, as usual, on a Monday by Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to see you today. We're going to go to Chile, first of all, and tell us what's happening there.
Yes, indeed. So Chile is going down a new president. He's not just a conservative right-wing politician, he's a hyper-conservative, I've heard him referred to. His name is Jose Antonio Cas, and last night he garnered about 58% of the vote and won the presidential election, the second round. Now, he was expected to emerge as the winner, it should be said. He was up against a woman called Janet Jara of the Communist Party. And I suppose the label communist alone would be enough to put off many Chilean voters. But she did get through the first round. I think her problem was that she was too much associated with the incumbent president, a man called Gabriel Boric, and he has struggled to get a hold of the country over the past couple of years. So the Chileans have opted to lurch to the right, and that is a trend reflected across South America in recent times. You know, at the start of the 2000s, there was a kind of a shift to the left in South America. They call it the pink tide because there was a wave of left-wing leaders who got elected. It didn't really work out, and now, some 2 decades later, the continent is kind of lurching to the right. We see with...
So it's a polar system.
Indeed, indeed.
And is there any question of centrist politics in any of these places, no?
Is centrist, to an extent they seem to have failed, because obviously this issue, and it's similar to a lot of countries in Latin America, the two issues that dominated the election campaign were crime and immigration. So Chile has about 300,000 immigrants. Many of them have come from Venezuela, have fled the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, and this guy Cas has taken a hard line on them. He's promised to send some of them back. He's promised to increase investment in the prison system, and a whole load of security measures.
So shades of Mr. Trump here.
Shades of Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump will be delighted that Cas has been elected, because they are, I suppose, like-minded ideologically. Trump is obviously looking to push his vision of conservative leaders around the world. So I expect, relations with the White House and the Chilean government to get off on a good start or on the right foot here. But it is very interesting. You know, you look at the continent, you look at Javier Milei in Argentina. He's kind of a right-wing libertarian. The other guy, Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, who has been really, really tough on crime. And actually has been quite successful. He's actually quite popular in a country that is plagued by violence, but of course he's using all sorts of extrajudicial means.
And what Mr. Trump would like to see happen in Venezuela, then of course, would be a move to the right too.
Yeah, indeed. And as we alluded to last week, Maria Corina Machado is there kind of waiting in the wings to take power if indeed Trump does force Maduro out of office, and that would be a hugely significant moment both for Venezuela and I think both for the US as well, for them to intervene like that. But they're coming increasingly close to doing so.
Right, Cast is going to have a difficult time though. I mean, that huge surge in criminality, particularly I suppose drug-based.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, as I say, it's similar across the continent. Narcotics and illegal narcotics, you know, are flowing ad infinitum in Chile. And in many ways it has ravaged a lot of the society. But Cast positioned himself as the candidate who would tackle this. He has promised to tackle the drug trafficking networks, the organised crime networks. And something tells me he'll be true to his word. He is quite conservative. You know, he will be very socially conservative as well. That's another thing to say about him. Very hardline stance on abortion, completely anti-abortion, even in cases of rape, and would kind of feed into that kind of religious brand of conservatism. But it is his approach to crime, and it is his approach to immigration that has really struck a chord with voters, and I think that's why he has been elected here.
And you make the point as well, this harks back to the 1970s in Chile as well.
The era of Augusto
there, isn't there?
Yeah,
yes.
Augusto Pinochet, the right-wing dictator. He ruled from 1973 to 1990, and Cast has said that if Pinochet were alive now, he would vote for him. Thus implying that Pinochet would be a supporter, that he's maybe trying to revive that brand of politics. Now, he was toppled after 17
Indeed.
Years in office. But you're right, there doesn't seem to be room for kind of a more centrist leader, even though the outgoing president, Boric, while he was left-wing, was probably more so centre-left. But his approach evidently did not work. So Cast is coming in now with a completely new brand of politics. He's kind of reinvented the right-wing populist movement in the country, and he's going to try and tackle the most prominent issues, which are crime and immigration.
The EU then to freeze billions in Russian assets indefinitely, but that's not going all that easy, is it?
No, it's not, and it's been met with resistance from Belgium, which is where the vast majority of the assets are stored. Now, while this is happening, Zelensky is today in Berlin for talks with Merz and co, the German Chancellor, and he did signal yesterday that he was willing, as we discussed off air, he was willing maybe to trade NATO membership for a potential peace deal. Now, I thought that was significant. But to get back to the assets, this is potentially crucial because there's about 210 billion euro in Russian assets stored in kind of it's known as a financial clearinghouse, call it almost a bank, called Euroclear in Brussels. Now, the Belgian government is very reluctant to allow these assets to be used to finance Ukraine in the form of a loan. European leaders like Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, wants to secure a loan against those assets.
Well, just for clarity, Belgium's issue is what? They'd be on the hook then, is that
yeah,
it?
They would be on the hook for a potential for lawsuits, and I think there have already been lawsuits filed by Moscow. So they fear that if sanctions at a future date were ever to be lifted on the Kremlin, on Russia, that Belgium would be legally obliged to pay back these Russian assets, and that is something they simply cannot afford.
So they want guarantees from the Union, I guess, then, is that
it? Indeed they do. And they also, their first option was that the European Union would borrow on the markets to finance this loan to Ukraine, and Ukraine is in need of a huge injection of cash.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
as we said, the frozen assets, 210 billion. The EU has promised in this loan to loan at 90 billion over the course of 2 years. So that's 45 billion a year. But if you look at it, Ukraine needs something like 150 billion to keep going over the next 2 years. To finance the reconstruction, you're talking 450, 500 billion. So you're talking eye-watering amounts of money, and it just, for me, it emphasises how sustainable is this.
And you would wonder that, wouldn't you? But it's gone beyond really Ukraine's security now. This is about European Union security.
Yeah, I think it is.
And that's why there's this.
Yeah, and that is why we are seeing Merz in particular and Starmer and Macron push so hard now, because there's a realisation there. I mean, you see the Russian drone incursions and obviously the ships off our waters, and to me they're clearly launching kind of a hybrid war on the continent. Now, those Eastern European states, which would be, I suppose, haunted by their past in the Soviet Union, are very hawkish on Russia, and you would understand that, and the main powers in Europe have taken a similar line. But it's quite, Russia poses an existential threat to the continent. There's no doubt about that. We can see that from their meddling in elections and from their invasion of Ukraine. But I think it's critical that the Ukraine issue is settled in a just and fair way. It's just how to do that is ultimately the main question here. Does Ukraine concede territory? I mean, Zelensky says you would have to change the constitution. In order to do that, there would have to be a referendum. To be honest, I can't see a way forward without Ukraine conceding parts of that Donbass region. I don't think it should have to concede the entirety of it.
Which is what the Russians
but I think what Russia have in control, I'm not sure Ukraine is ever going to get that back.
Right. And do I get the impression that Zelensky is willing to leave the lines where the battle lines are now? Possibly.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the most probable outcome here.
But that's not enough for the Russians, is it?
No, the Russians want to take more, and Vladimir Putin wants the entirety of the Donbass region, which is that region in eastern Ukraine. He wants that in full. And all of this happens against the backdrop of major strikes. There was 4 killed yesterday. I'm sure we'll see more fatalities today. So Russia is pounding, and ultimately Ukraine is being battered at the front, and that's through no fault of their own. They fought valiantly, but they just do not have the finances to sustain this. Russia, as I said a couple of weeks ago, has gained an upper hand in the kind of drone war which is taking place on the front lines. And they are, I think, slowly taking control of this conflict because they're willing to expend men and money in order to do so.
And what about Orban's objection to this? How are they getting around that?
Yeah, there was actually a deal reached over the weekend.
This is Viktor Orban.
This is Viktor Orban, the Hungarian leader, who is, I suppose, almost pro-Kremlin, very friendly towards Moscow. He's joined by the Slovakian leader Robert Fico, who would be friendly towards Moscow as well. And they have kind of got in the way of the various sanctions packages because the sanctions packages require unanimity in order to be passed. So in other words, they need each and every European leader to pass them.
Yes. So he's a veto.
He has a veto. Now, he hasn't, as I understand, vetoed a sanctions package so far, but it is a constant threat. Now, he is under pressure at home. There's an opposition guy there.
Over the weekend, a lot of protests.
And an opposition leader called Peter Magyar, who looks to be making shapes and could potentially topple Orban, but certainly his attitude towards the Kremlin does not go down well in Europe, and needless to say, does not go down well in Ukraine. Both himself and Fico have cultivated ties with Moscow, and that has made life difficult for the European Union. But it looks like they will be able to get around it. The question is whether they will finance this new loan, which I think is crucial for Ukraine's survival.
All right, let me take a break, Thomas. We'll be back with more global news in just a moment.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1-800-938-007. Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On, now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tippfm.com.
And Thomas Conway is still with me. We're talking about global news, but just in case I forget, I want to say a very, very special, happy, would you believe, 109th birthday to Eileen Hines of the Heath in Roscrea, seemingly the oldest person in Ireland, and lots of love coming in from all of Eileen's family today. And Eileen, we wish you the very, very best indeed, and a very happy Christmas to you. And it's nice to hear that you listen to the radio station as well, and thank you for that. Thomas, we're going to talk about Thailand and Cambodia now. This was another peace deal that was done by Mr. Trump and his acolytes, wasn't it? But it's falling apart.
Yeah, suddenly all these peace deals seem to are becoming quite fragile, are being exposed as quite fragile. So he struck a peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia during the summer. It shares essentially a 700-kilometre border, which there have been disputes and fights, and they have traded blows, the two militaries, across the border for years. It was drawn up by the French in 1907, a French cartographer, and since then it has been kind of a disputed zone. But this July, anyway, President Trump brokered a ceasefire. There was a signing ceremony a couple of weeks ago when Trump was in Southeast Asia, and things looked to be going merrily. But over the past week, the dispute was essentially ignited by what you would think is a minor incident. Last Sunday week, a Thai engineering team was working on an access road in the disputed area of the border area. And according to the Thai army, it was fired on by Cambodian troops. But of course, the Cambodians deny this, and they argued that it was Thailand who fired the first shots. So it kind of escalated over the course of the past few days. Now, Trump has implored both sides to stop fighting, and it doesn't do his reputation any good at all when he sees these
as the great peacemaker.
Indeed. But confrontations have continued on the border. Now, both countries face domestic challenges. As you can imagine, both were absolutely racked by tariffs earlier in the year. And of course, Trump wielded the tariff stick as a means of getting them together. So both were fairly reluctant. Thailand in particular was reluctant to sign up to the peace agreement, but essentially it had to, because Trump was going to impose extremely punitive tariffs on it. Cambodia, slightly happier to welcome the outside intervention, because it is the smaller country and it feels at a military disadvantage here.
So Thailand is the dominant force here, isn't it? Yeah.
Thailand is the dominant force, and it's under a new Prime Minister, Arnutin Shirvarakul, and he heads a minority coalition which has essentially been beset by problems. So he has let this one go to the military. He's basically given the military carte blanche, essentially, to conduct their actions as they see fit. And of course, a lot of the Thai public actually support intervention here. They're quite frustrated at the situation, quite sick and tired of these border disputes, and they're supportive of the military campaign. Cambodia, on the other hand, there's kind of a complex domestic situation in Cambodia. The Prime Minister is a guy called Hun Mane, but he's essentially the protege of his father, Hun Sen, who was the former Prime Minister. Now, there was a massive furore earlier in the year when Hun Sen was reported to have had relations, almost familial relations, with a former Thai Prime Minister, as in he was like an uncle to her. She was, looking for advice off him. So very strange. There are two powerful families, one in Thailand, one in Cambodia. And I suppose they developed relations over the years. And it's a really unusual kind of state of affairs there. It was one of the reasons why that former Thai Prime Minister was booted out of office. So the public in Thailand in particular were not happy with this. But the question is, can Trump clamp down on this and bang heads together again and broker some kind of deal? Thailand has repeatedly said it's not ready for diplomacy, and Cambodia, it says, must show sincerity before it is ready to try for a ceasefire again. So what all that means is a little bit uncertain. But this does not do that part of the world any good. It's Southeast Asia. A lot of people will go to visit. A lot of people would go on holidays there, tours there, and it harms the reputation of the country if effectively they are at war. The two of them.
Of course, when you mention Cambodia, we all think of the killing fields.
The killing fields, indeed,
Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot, was it?
Yeah, the dictator, yeah.
Yeah, dreadful tragedies there over the... So we're not sure what the outcome of that is going to be.
No, it's shady. I mean, Trump again will probably wield the tariffs as a mechanism of bringing the two countries to the table, and maybe he will squeeze through some sort of a deal. But certainly, as we kind of talked off air, you look at the Gaza ceasefire, that's quite fragile. We're going to mention another one in Rwanda in a minute, which is on shaky ground as well. This, and then he hasn't solved, obviously, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So suddenly his reputation as a great peacemaker, and he was bragging about it in the Oval Office over the weekend, doesn't quite lie in tatters, but it is certainly quite fragile. And you would have to question the solidity of the peace deals he's striking. These are complex international conflicts, and they cannot just be resolved in a couple of days.
In a deal, as he says. Yeah, the shooting at Brown University in Providence in Rhode Island as well. Very, very unfortunate what happened there as well.
Yeah, I suppose this, it has been eclipsed obviously by that awful shooting on Bondi Beach that you talked about earlier in the programme. But this was another shooting at Brown University in Rhode Island. Left 2 people dead and 9 injured. Police searched the campus for a male dressed in black, but have not yet made an arrest. Trump was fully briefed and students were ordered to shelter. So I was watching this on CNN last night, and it is one of over 70 school shootings that have occurred over the past, I suppose, couple of decades or 2 decades. An all too common occurrence, and it obviously reignites the whole debate about around firearms, which is going to, which Australia is going to have now as well. But in the United States, I suppose the attachment to the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is so strong that I'm not sure this will precipitate any change.
You'd wonder what will precipitate change there as well. I wasn't across what was happening in Belarus. What happened there?
To the credit of the Americans here, there was a prisoner release deal. Belarus released 123 prisoners as part of an American broker deal, and among those freed significantly were Alex Bialyatsky, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and Maria Kolesnikova, who's a prominent political activist. Now, this was actually quite the coup for the United States, because in return for lifting some sanctions, the Belarusian leader, Andrei Lukashenko, said he would release these prisoners who obviously had been incarcerated off the back of widespread protests over the election in 2019. So it's significant that those two individuals were freed. There were kind of scenes of jubilation in Minsk, the capital, over the weekend. And it is kind of one of the few brighter stories of the past weekend. So, it's...
What does Russia think of that, though?
I'm not entirely sure, but I would suspect it is not happy whatsoever. Russia kind of has left...
Belarus is the great ally, isn't it?
It's the great ally, but Lukashenko kind of does his own thing in Belarus. Vladimir Putin supports him because Lukashenko gives support to the Russian invasion, and that's why the sanctions were imposed by the West. But he is certainly not as strong a leader, or doesn't have as strong a grip on power as Vladimir Putin does in Russia. That goes without saying, and that was evident at the last election. And obviously Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who has ties to Tipperary.
Yes.
So it's quite evident that he, I think the moment for insurrection or for revolution in Belarus has probably passed, and we will get a couple more years of Lukashenko, unfortunately. But certainly he's on shakier ground than, say, Vladimir Putin.
Interesting. Now, you alluded to that Rwandan situation. Will you just bring us up to speed on that?
Yeah, so M23, who are a Rwandan-backed militia group, seized a city in the eastern Congo. And this came days after Mr. Trump brokered a peace agreement between Congo and Rwanda. The deal compels Rwanda to stop supporting the militia group, and they're eating into the eastern side of the Congo, but it's done little to halt its offensive in the mineral-rich region. And Mike Waltz, the American ambassador to the UN, has expressed, what can only be construed as huge frustration at the United Nations. He said that Rwanda was leading the region towards instability and war. And obviously this is another conflict in kind of the heart of Africa that is not being resolved and that is festering and being allowed to fester. So, you join conflicts in Sudan, Ethiopia and the Tigray region, and obviously now in that eastern part of Congo. So, things not going well from a peace perspective in terms of Donald Trump either.
Yeah, and just a quick word on what happened on Bondi Beach. Just the anti-Semitic attack, and we see the Gardaí now are upping security around the Jewish celebrations in Ireland, for example. You'd have to be concerned. You
would have to be concerned. It's absolutely shocking. I mean, it was appalling what happened yesterday in Bondi, and I think, terrifying for all those involved. And were it not for the intervention of that guy, many more could have been killed.
Absolutely.
But I think it does. It is part of a trend. I think there has been a rise in anti-Semitic incidents over the past few years since October 7th. I think people have wrongly conflated anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. So they see just because you're a Jew, that you're immediately supportive of what the Netanyahu government is doing, and that is simply not true. I mean, a lot of Jewish people are supportive. Many aren't, though.
Many aren't indeed. And I was making that point to Ryan O'Mara earlier on. Is it important in the rhetoric now to point that out?
I think it has to be. I think it has to be highlighted because, we can get into this this attitude of groupthink very quickly, and it's very easy to tar everyone with the same brush. But there are Jewish people out there who would abhor what is happening or what has happened in Gaza and would completely condemn the Israeli government. We have to remember that the Israeli government is actually, in Israeli domestic political terms, is quite extreme.
Very right-wing.
Very right-wing. And so there's a lot of people there, probably within Israel, which would be opposed to what it's doing.
Well, we've seen the protests within Israel.
Indeed. It's worth mentioning that there were people killed in Gaza over the weekend as well. Sure. So there are two sides to it, but certainly I think anti-Semitism is repugnant and it's not acceptable, and this attack was completely egregious.
All right, Thomas, pleasure as always. Thank you so much. Thomas Conway there of the Nina Guardian. News and information's coming up.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Paul. I was speaking to Father Tony Flannery there a little while ago, and Liam was on to us from Kilkenny, and he says, Fran, God bless that man, 79 years old with such an open, positive mind. This is the man the Catholic Church needs now more than ever. If not, the Catholic religion is in danger of being lost forever. God bless this wonderful man. A lot of people on to us about Tony Flannery and how impressed they are by him, and thank you for that on 083 311 3311. Now, glad to be joined by our relationships expert, Susan O'Donoghue, who's with me in studio. Good morning to you, Susan.
Morning, Fran.
Lovely to see you today. You're going to talk to us. Guess what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about Christmas.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. And what aspect of it really? Is it the chaos of it?
And the relationships.
Oh, God.
Yeah. That'd be my bag. But I think we all struggle sometimes, especially if we go back to family of origin, because that's where we had to create our protectors, and that's where we learned how the world works, and that's how we, I suppose, managed our view on what to expect from others and the world. So it can be you can fall back into like being a child again, get your place back in the family of when you were 3. It's kind of, and it happens to everybody. I know what happened to me years ago, because my husband said to me, oh my God, you change when you go back. It's just part and parcel of it. But I suppose it's not even to change it, it's to understand it and be aware of it when it happens.
Right. And it's natural, is it, that would
Well,
happen
it's like
degree?
these are unconscious now, remember,
Right,
reactions.
okay, yeah.
So I suppose what the goal would be is to become conscious of what we're doing. It's not to actually change it now, because remember, these things that we put in place, or our labels that we took on, we did them to protect ourselves because we felt threatened. So of course we want to feel safe. So, but it's to understand that that's what we did, and it's to be able to recognise what we took on and what labels we are now working out of. You know, because you'll find it's quite amazing, because you'll even hear, like, sometimes the old banter, the slagging will start from when you were small. Do you know, when you grow up in the household and you have your little place in the household, and
you add a few drinks to that then, and it becomes a little caustic, maybe. Yeah.
And that's, to me, this is the thing now. And, like, you know, for some of us, you know, it's okay, we can go back there and we're not that flustered. But for some, it can be very threatening to go back to, or even go to, say, you know, to go to in-laws can be hugely threatening. You know, you're out your comfort zone. You know what I mean? You don't know what the dynamic of that family was growing up, but you'll find out fairly lively. Do you know? Because we all have a different dynamic, you know, and we all have our own little place in it. So I suppose it's self-care 100%. You know, and if you're working on that throughout the year, you'll find that you're better at it at Christmas. Of course you will. You can't just turn on the switch now at Christmas and go, I'm going to be so reflectful and become more conscious. It's a thing that you need to do over time, yeah? It's the same way as you got your protector.
Yeah, but is it just that you become more tolerant than if you've been working on yourself? And you'd be more tolerant of people sort of, you know, reverting back to their roles and
tolerant kind of indicates to me that you'd put up with it more.
That's what I mean, though. And I don't think you'd be that.
No.
Right.
No, I would say that you can separate out from their behaviour, and you know that what they say, do, feel, and think is about them and for them. That doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean that you don't take care of yourself in it, that if somebody comes up to you and says something that's really mean, that it's, you know, you don't say, well, listen now, you know, I think that's out of line and I feel, but you hear all the I messages. I feel that I think that's out of line. You're not saying, oh my God, you're a disgrace. You know, that's the difference. You hold yourself in it. You say what you feel, but you come from that I place, because communication is huge in all this, isn't it? I think it's the key to solving all this, you know, for yourself, not for them now, remember.
Yes.
I'm not going out to solve it for anybody else. I'm there to mind myself in it, because that's where my power is.
But you know that notion of, and I mean, it's an old cliche at this point, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is a sign of madness. But as families, we do that every year around Christmas time.
100%, yeah.
Even if there are issues, we will do the same thing again.
And we'll pretend and we'll push the issues aside and we'll deflect from them. We'll, you know, or otherwise we get hell on into it and we'll have war again like we do every Christmas. And it's like, be the change you want to see. So and sometimes that just happens because it's unsafe. It's not safe enough for us to say, do you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. Because you feel the guilt and you get dragged into it, and it's that enmeshment again with family. It's that back and forth, and that, you know, it can be really mean and nasty, like.
Of course it can. And that was one of my notes for you. Why can't we just say, look, lads, this doesn't work for me. I'd be glad to meet you in a couple of months' time and we'd have a cup of coffee and that's all fine. But in that cauldron of Christmas, I can't do that anymore.
And how is it now, if you're in that place, that you can't do that?
Well, it's probably that maybe you feel victimised and you feel picked upon and, you know.
Yeah, to save yourself from that then.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. What do you need to do? And that's part of it, just exactly what you said. Maybe I need to say, I won't be able to make it this year.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll meet you maybe for a coffee in the middle of it, or I'll meet you a month down the line, or we can go for, you know, a meal, or we can do something later on. Like, and are you safe enough to do that is the question. Because if I'm still going for Christmas, I mustn't be safe enough. Like, how is it that I can't say, lads, I need a bit of a break here, I need my boundary in place here now. And
feel okay about that decision.
That's the thing. The thing about it is if I don't, and if remember now, our feelings are our friends. So when our feelings come up and we feel all that guilt and shame and, oh my God, sure, I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Oh, I should go. Yeah, do you hear the shoulds and the coulds and the musts and the have to? That's when you know you're in an unconscious place. That's when you know now that you're reactive. Right? So when you hear the shoulds, coulds, must, have to and ought to, when you hear them, when it's like nearly a guilt trip into going,
I suppose,
now I know that I'm in a place of unsafety.
The other aspect of it, Susan, we got a letter, I think it's about a month ago now, into our Dear Phil slot, but it was from a mother who just sick and tired of providing the Christmas meal at this stage, sort of propping up everybody, making sure that the whole thing is right for everybody. And because she said that stops this year, in fact, myself and my husband were going away out of the country, but she got a whole load of grief from the daughter, particularly,
Right.
who said, no, this is terrible. You do this every year. We expect you to do this. And,
Expectation, yeah. Now we need to manage our expectation of ourselves, and we need to leave others manage theirs.
Right.
Yeah. So it's about not taking on your daughter's stuff. It's about, look, saying, this is my boundary. This is where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, some people love having Christmas in their house, but that doesn't mean you have to take on all the cost.
Yes, I know.
You know, like, what we can do is we can delve out the stuff to everybody. We can say, lads, I'd love to have you over for Christmas, but I'm going to ask that everybody bring whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But if you do it for so long,
Yeah.
silently, Susan, people expect it.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
It's. I always think, you know, even when you start working on yourself, even when you start reflecting on your own behaviour and you start looking at things and you start going, God, that's not working for me anymore, people get annoyed at you.
Yeah.
Because if you had the label, say, of the carer in the family, you know, and now you're not doing that anymore, people get annoyed because now it's change, and people don't like change.
Yeah.
You know, we like certainty. We don't like the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, you know. And I suppose even if it's misery that we're suffering in, right, we still like the certainty of misery. Does that make sense? As opposed to, like, the misery of uncertainty. You know, we'll take the misery of the certainty of misery first. So, like, we really need to check in with ourselves, because that's what it's about. That's what self-care is. Self-care is about asking the question of yourself, oh my God, I feel so upset now, or I feel so angry or so jealous. And remember, it's those feelings that I call the emergency feelings, the ones that really grab your attention. It's not the lovey fluffy ones, because they're fine, we'll take them every day. But those ones that really rattle our cage, we need to go, oh my God, what's coming up for me here? And what's after bringing this up for me? Like, it's the who, where, what and why. You know, those questions like, where was I? Who was I with? How many times does it happen? Who's there when it happens? What situation am I in? What's the context of it? It's all of that. And it's bringing all that and looking at it and thinking, and I wonder where that comes from, that fear of that now. Because that's what it is. It's a fear, yeah?
Yeah, and what a shame that you're fearful of a celebration, you know.
Yeah, but it's not just the celebration you're fearful of. It's the relationships within the celebration.
Of course, but what I meant was a time that should be a happy time. You know, it should be.
And that's the thing. This is the whole thing. We have this nostalgic thing built up in our head that Christmas should be. Yeah, this special time when everybody gets together. Like, I've told the story here already where I made a decision when the lads were small, because they said to me, oh my God, you know, we never get to play with that, and I said, that's it, closed doors now. You can come before or after, but this is the way it is, because this is the time now when Santy comes, and he's so important, yeah. And the lads, when they opened their presents, they were so excited about it. And then the next thing, you'd either be going somewhere or someone would be coming to your house, and everything stopped for them because they had to say hello, how are you, when everybody came in and all this carry on. That's not what they wanted. Yeah, so now it's a pyjama day in our house. You can wear what you like. You come down to dinner, we all sit at the table together, we have the crack, we pull a few crackers and we have a bit of fun. You don't have to sit there for ages if you don't want to. You don't have to say, you know what I mean? It's not that you have to sit there, dessert is over, you can go back and get your dessert later on. It's about relaxing. It's about being yourself. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. The other aspect that concerns me, though, is that people might be getting together this Christmas, and it might be a milestone for them. They could well have lost a loved one, you know, during the year as well. That puts another dynamic on it, doesn't it? You know?
Like the grief of losing somebody. And I always think, you know, the first year is really hard, but I think 10 years down the line it can be really hard. You know, there's no time limit on this, you know, and I just think it's about taking care of yourself and that. If you need to set a place, if you need to talk about it, if you need to remember them, whatever you need to do, right?
Yes.
And you will know, if you check in with yourself and ask yourself, what would make this easier for me? What would help me in this now? Because it's going to be something different for everybody. It might be similar, but it might be different in certain ways.
It's interesting that you speak about that notion of setting a place for the loved one who's no longer with you. I was often I feel kind of odd about that. I'm not sure why.
I have never done that.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't my need to do that. But I would have gone out the back, and I would, like, even going to a grave sometimes works for me, sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
So I would have, like, went out the back and had my time. And I think that's very important, is to take time out for yourself, especially if there is a lot of grief around or a lot of upset, or if you're going into a house that you don't know what's going to happen, what the dynamic is going to be like, and you're stressing out. Take the time out. Go for a walk, you know. And if you're in a house and you know that it's that mood is getting heightened, say, oh, I forgot something in the car, and go off out and go for a walk for yourself, or do what you need to do. That's what I mean by taking care of yourself. And I generally put a plan in place, right? If I'm going somewhere where I know it's not safe for me, I generally put a plan in place that if I need an exit strategy, I have it. Yeah. So it's about just thinking to yourself, what do I need to do now before I go here? Because we all know that we go to parties, we go to celebrations, we go to all this stuff that you're supposed to be happy at.
I know.
Yeah. And you're dreading it. So it's about, how am I going to mind myself in it? And another thing that struck me was, this year they're all on about, you know, it's TikTok and it's all this. I didn't know this now because I'm not even on TikTok, but I was listening to it. And they talk about, you know, when your friend calls up and they say cancel something, and they go, oh my God, that's brilliant. They celebrate when people cancel.
What?
They had some name on it, and I was thinking to myself, oh my God, what are we doing?
They celebrate when they cancel what?
Like, say, if a friend calls up and they say, oh, sorry, I can't meet you now, you know, at the last minute kind of thing, and then the people celebrate because they didn't really want to go anyway. And my fear of that is, mind yourself in front of children.
Right, okay.
Because relationships and connection is so important, right? And I know that it can be threatening, and I know all that, but there's a way to express that to kids that wouldn't be that. Yeah. You know, celebrating because we're not meeting someone kind of is a bit iffy to me, you know, especially if it's done now out in the social media, so it's a bit.
I know, yeah. Drink, of course, is, you know, I mean, we alluded to this earlier on, but it can cause a huge. Now, God knows I'm partial to the odd glass of Merlot, but it can cause huge issues, can't it? It really, what I would call it is the fuel to the fire. Yeah, it really, and people say things and they come home and they go, oh my God, I don't believe I said that. And, you know, it's about then repairing, because it happens, right? So if it does happen, right, take a deep breath. What do I need to do for myself now on this? Right, but some use it as to excuse their behaviour, as well.
And that's where boundaries come in.
Yeah.
Because it's okay to say to somebody, do you know what, you were here last year and there was a bit of a kerfuffle, and we're going to try and avoid that now this year, so I'd appreciate it. Yeah? That's okay to say to somebody.
Yeah, somebody saying to me here, let their sickness take a break and return after Christmas. Let their lost loved ones be forgotten. The pressure should be to have a happy time over Christmas. It's a time for togetherness and reflection. That's all very well, but it's very hard to.
Yeah, and you know what?
Stuff aside, you know.
Yeah, if you do that, and you know, I often talk about emotions and feelings, they're there for us, they're not against us. So when that feeling comes up of upset, or that feeling comes up of grief or fear or sadness or whatever, or stress around going to somebody's house or somebody coming to your house, that's okay. That's your good self telling you need to mind yourself in this now, it's not safe.
Well, otherwise you have an elephant in the room, haven't you?
You have an elephant in the room and you're trying to be something you're not. And that never works, because then, as you say, when you take a drink, when something happens or someone else takes a drink and they start, and then the next thing you know, you're all off. Do you know what I mean? So it's about being honest, being open, being direct and kind.
Yeah.
You can still have your boundary and still be kind to somebody, because boundaries are about taking care of yourself but not against somebody else.
Well, that's for sure. If people want to talk to you, Susan?
Sure, it's 086 3676 256 or info@emotionalwellbeing.ie. And a happy Christmas to everybody, and to you, Fran.
And many happy returns to you and to your family as well, Susan. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll take a break. We're back with more Tip Today in a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today. Now, over the past few weeks, off and on. We've been speaking about drug addiction and drug debt and the like. But our good friend, a regular contributor over many years now, Paul Lafford, was in touch with us, and he's offering some interesting insight into the whole topic of addiction. Good morning to you, Paul.
Hi, Fran. How are you today?
I'm well, Paul, and we were very taken with your message, and thank you so much for sharing with us. Would you take us back to 2015 and that experience in Dublin, Paul?
Yeah. Actually, I was actually wrong with my date, Fran. It was actually 2016, but that's not here nor there.
Yeah.
I suppose, look, around the year 2012, 2013, Fran, I started drinking very, very heavily. Now, in hindsight, looking back, I can just find that it was a very, very unhappy period in my life. Okay, I just found myself. Do you ever kind of feel that you're stuck? You don't seem to be going anywhere. But that's not here nor there.
Yeah.
So anyway, as time went on, by the time 2015 came, I realised I was drinking way too heavily. I had a fantastic doctor in care, and obviously a fantastic wife and family, and some very, very good friends. And I stopped drinking. It was September 2015. And stopping drinking was very, very easy, Fran. Simple. Staying stopped was the problem. And that's when I realised just how much of a hold that drink had taken on me. So I stuck with it. It was, by God, it was bloody, bloody hard to stop drinking. And I managed to stay off it. It was a very, very tough times. I went to AA meetings, but I didn't find them any good for me, because I think if it was a scale of 1 to 10, I've often said to Fran, if I met you this evening and we went out somewhere and I had a cup of coffee, and let's just say you had a glass of wine, you'd leave and you'd go home and you wouldn't give one damn if you ever saw a glass of wine again. Whereas if I was drinking that glass of wine, I'd have to bring home the rest of the bottle. That's basically the difference between what would be a normal drinker and people like me.
Yes.
So I'm now heading into my 11th Christmas drink-free. I haven't touched drink. But as I said, I went to AA meetings and I found they weren't really doing me any favours, because I actually think, Fran, that on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say maybe I was maybe 2, maybe 2.5. I went to some of these meetings where I heard of carnage, where I heard of people that had been really, really through the mill with drink. And I thought, if it's this hard for me to give up drink, what must it be like for a person that's at the upper end of the scale drinking? Because it must be horrendous. And then I just thought, and that's just alcohol, which is fully legal in the country. And then I thought, imagine a person on drugs, like whether it's cocaine, whether it's some really, really horrible drugs that are out there. But to go on then, March 2016, it was Keane's birthday. And we took him to Dublin for the weekend to see Dynamo, the magician. He was playing in the 3 Arena. And we had a fantastic time in Dublin, but I was only off the drink about 4 months this time. And I suppose, what would they call it? I think they call it the dry drunk. But we were on our way home, and we went down to the square in Tala. And Keane had money in his pocket that he'd been given for his birthday, and it was burning a hole in his pocket. So he wanted to go in to buy stuff in the toy shop there, Smith's. But we went into the square in Tala, and we were sitting down in one of the fast food restaurants. And just the three of us, Caroline, Keane and myself. And this man approached us, and he was really now under the weather. He had obviously taken, God only knows what the poor man had taken. And now, Fran, he was no way threatening. He was no way the poor man, he approached us and he just asked if we had any change. And we were reaching in our pockets to give him a few quid. And with that, Fran, security fellas came from everywhere, screaming. Now, they weren't just shouting, they were screaming at us, don't give him anything. And they just grabbed him and pushed him away and pushed him out. And I'll never forget it, Fran, because they had no idea that the fella sitting down at the table with his wife and his child and the idyllic little family up to the capital for a few days, that guy sitting down there was struggling with a drink problem. And I was no better than that poor misfortunate man who like I always remember, it was freezing cold that day, Fran. Very similar to today. I'll always remember that because I was bringing Cian over to the to Smith's, the toy shop, and you have to go across the car park in the square, and you kind of walk along one of those trolley bays that's covered in. But I remember when we were going over there was a homeless man sitting there, and it was freezing cold. Now it was really, really cold. And this poor man, I gave him a $5, and he held my hand, and it was, you know, that look of a genuine sincerity when he said thanks. But I was so upset because I just could not get this man that they had pushed out of the shopping centre out of my way. Now, a few people have come back to me and said, now listen, you know, don't be such of a stew con up in the country. That guy probably would have done you if he got half a chance. And you know what? Maybe. But he was no way threatening to us. And if he just wanted a few quid, we didn't care. We had it. But you see, Fran, I was sitting there that day, as I said, the idyllic little family up from the country. I had access to a doctor. I have access to treatment. I have a fantastic wife and family and fantastic friends with me who supported me thick and thin. We were coming down the road that night, and with all this modern technology and all that now, we were able to turn on the heating at home from our phone coming down the motorway. So that when we got home, our house was lovely and warm. And Caroline's mum, Chris, actually, can I just say a quick, a speedy recovery to Chris? She's actually in hospital at the moment. She's listening this morning. Just like to say, get well soon, Chrissy, and the very best of luck to you. But Chrissy would keep our dog for a couple of days while we'd be away. And she'd always know that we'd be coming home of a Wednesday or whatever. She'd always bring in the dog and put the dog into our bed inside the utility room. And we got home that evening. And as I said, even the dog was there, hand out asleep up beside the radiator in a warm house. And I thought, Jesus Christ, even our dog has a roof over her head, and she's lovely and warm and food. And I could not get that poor misfortunate man out of my mind. And therein lies my problem with all this, Fran, because we talk about those two misfortunates in Clonmel. I didn't see the video recently, but that horrible video that I don't want to see it, of those people taking drugs here in Clonmel. Yeah. They're seen as junkies, right? And they're referred to as some of the most horrible terms. In the last few years, some very, very high-profile people have passed away from taking drugs. One of them, a very, very well-known broadcaster. They're treated in this country as heroes. But yet, a misfortunate person like those people, those people, for instance, in Clonmel, if they went to school or if they got career guidance, whatever, none of those people said to their career guidance teacher, oh yeah, I want to be sleeping rough, I want to be out in the wet and the rain, I want to be screamed at and hated by society because I got caught with addiction. None of them wanted that.
They had their dreams, and they had their... Every
one of them, Fran. They were all children, and God knows where they wanted to be. They might have wanted to be playing in rock bands, who knows? But I heard Joe talking to you there recently, Joe Leahy. Now, Joe is a man, I'm not going to say a word against Joe. Jesus, he's a man I hold the highest esteem, and the man has done so much good. But Joe made a comment when he was talking to you there last week about just go and get treatment. And I wish it was just like that, Fran, that just out of the blue that you're out in the cold in Clonmel here today and you can just opt for treatment. I was looking at the prices for a treatment centre, and a 28-day in-house plan for an adult is €9,000.
Wow.
A 42-day in-house plan for an adolescent is 20,000. Now, Fran, I'm in a very good job. I wouldn't have that kind of money. And so you take some misfortunate person who's out on the street today in the freezing cold or whatever. What hope have they? There's families in this country that can't even get 60 quid to go to a doctor. So, it's not just a case of, just stop taking drugs or just go and get treatment. If it was just that easy, Fran, I guarantee if there was a treatment centre, we'll just say put up in Clonmel or whatever, and it was maybe in the town centre or whatever to help these people, I guarantee people are going to be protesting about it. And then we'd say, oh, they're coming along like they're trying to normalise drugs. There's nothing normal about drugs. But we're going to have to look at this. Like, I mean, I heard you talking at the top of your show there, and God knows it's a black day in Tipperary today, but I heard you talking about the increase in drugs and people drinking driving.
Yes.
And taking drugs.
Yeah,
and then I heard
27% increase, yeah.
Like, it's shocking. It's shocking. And like, I mean, and then I heard you talking to Superintendent Golden there.
Eddie Golden,
These are the people at the coalface who are picking up the pieces of all this. But, Fran, unpopular conversations are going to have to be had. We romanticise drink and we glorify drink, for instance, in this country. Every time a dignitary comes to this country, what's the first thing they do? They put a pint in there to get the big photo op. We're great crack. We're the Irish. We're great crack. We're pissed half the time going around the country. And the same thing, but if you're someone like me, as I said, who would not be a normal drinker, and again, as I keep saying, I was at the very bottom of the scale. Now, believe you me, if I hadn't stopped, Fran, and kept going, the carnage would have come. Sure as night follows day. That will come. It comes to everybody. And there's people might start off on mild drugs the same way. And I would urge people today, I would urge them, if you think you have a problem with it, because I couldn't be told. Remember, like, Caroline would say to me, Jesus, do you have to have another drink tonight? To me, that was totally normal. But it was only when I stopped drinking that I realised, Jesus Christ, this thing has such a stranglehold on me. I mean, we went to a wedding one day. I'll always remember this. We went to a wedding, and Caroline was after getting the makeup done and the hair done, and she had the new dress. She looked absolutely amazing. And I'll always remember we were sitting in the hotel and the staff were going around, where they go around with bottles of wine and they were topping up people's glasses. And I nearly went out of my mind. I ruined the day for Caroline. I ruined the day for myself. We got home. I'll always remember I got home, took off my good clothes. I put on a T-shirt and tracksuit bottom and I sat down below on the sofa and turned on. It was 10:30 on a Saturday night. I turned on Match of the Day. And I'll always remember that was the first time that day that I felt safe. That I said, Jesus, thank God I'm out of that place. But I had ruined the day for her.
But how do you mean you'd ruined it because of your drinking, was it?
Because I just wanted to... I was off the drink. Sorry, I should have said I wasn't drinking that day. But they were going around and the drink was just like... The drink was like on tap. And
you couldn't have it.
But I couldn't have it.
Wow.
Fran, I think I told you this story. Years ago, I was down there in Tipp FM on work experience for a couple of weeks. And I remember... one of the mornings, I was outside there in the newsroom in Tipp FM, and you were doing a wine slot. And I'll always remember I can't remember the man you were doing it with now, but that's not here nor there. But I always remember I was outside and I could really taste the wine. And you were just describing, the man that was with you doing the wine slot was actually just discussing wine. And that's the effect that alcohol will have on me, right? And I'm at the bottom of the ladder. I would consider myself at the bottom of the scale.
You see, I know you for a long time. I would have never imagined you as. I mean, do I say alcoholic, Paul? Do I?
Yeah, I mean, there's no yes, I think so. I think you should say alcoholic, Fran, because, as I heard this said once, a woman isn't a little bit pregnant. She's either pregnant or not.
Yeah.
And that was a comparison that was made once. And whether you're at the very bottom of the scale or way up at the top, what we call a roaring alcoholic, which is, again, some of these lovely terms we have for these people.
But is it a case, am I summing up what you're saying in there, but for the grace of God, go I, to some extent? Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I can go back to that day above in Dublin, and that misfortunate man. I mean, I can still see his face, Fran. He was no way threatening, right? He was only looking for a couple of quid. You know what? Maybe the poor man might have gone off and given it to somebody he owed money to. I don't know. But the way society reacted to him, and yet I was sitting there, as I say, with my wife and child, money in my pocket, a warm house to go home to, plenty of food, a job to go to the following morning, everything you could possibly want. I was no better than that poor misfortunate man. And this is the problem. This is what we have to look at as a society. Unpopular decisions will have to be made. We are going to have to look at this, because we have to lose this stereotypical image of, Jesus, we're Irish, we're great crack, we love to be pissed all the time. We have to start losing that. But we also have to look at the drug problem we have in this country, which is out of control. And God knows, look what happened in Edenderry last week. And if you look at some of the other stuff that's going on, the way families are being intimidated, and these people seem to be operating with total impunity, and nothing is done. But we can't just come along and blame the victims. Nobody asked for that. We're going to have to look at treatment. And God knows our hospitals can't treat what they have to treat. So, it's going to have to be looked at in a much. I don't know how. I don't know the answers, Fran. Jesus, if I did.
And have you gotten to the stage now, Paul? Do you still wish you could have a sociable? Yes. Now, there's another term. Jesus, sociable. Do you still wish you could do that, Paul?
Yep. When I was doing a thing for the Wheelchair Association in Care House in the afternoon. Yes, it was a lovely afternoon doing their party, their annual party for the Wheelchair Association. It was a great afternoon in Care House. And afterwards, then Keane and myself said, you know what, we'll have our tea in Care House. We'll treat ourselves. And we went out to the bar in Care House, and we had a lovely bit of grub yesterday evening. Fantastic. Met some friends, had a great old chat, and I was looking around me there, and everybody was sitting down, talking away. Typical Sunday evening, lovely evening, pissing rain outside, everybody inside. And yes, I would love to have been. I said, geez, wouldn't I love now a couple of pints? But I just can't. I met one of our neighbours there, and lovely, lovely man, had a great laugh and a crack with him and all that. And just typical lovely place to be the Sunday evening, But I just have to say, right, get out of here. And the minute even though I'm into my 11th Christmas now without drink, the minute I feel the urge starting to come on, I say, right, time to go now.
And could I ask you something very personal? And you tell me to mind my own business if you would, but
no, never.
When you lost your lovely wife Caroline, were you tempted?
Oh Jesus, Fran! The day Caroline was diagnosed, she phoned me from the hospital here in Clonmel, and she was crying. I knew things were bad. I went straight up to the hospital, and she was just such a remarkable woman. Fran, Caroline, cried for about 10 minutes and said, right, well, let's move on. Now, the crying is over. She was so tough, tougher than I'd be. But coming back down from the hospital anyway that day, just after getting the news and all that, the first place I wanted to go was the pub. And I just said, if I had gone there, I'd probably be there yet, Fran. But I did. But on her deathbed, she made me a promise. She said, please, don't drink again. And I said, I would never insult your memory, I said, by drinking again. So I'm not religious, as you know, but I do believe that she's not too far away. I do believe she's keeping an eye on me. And I do know she's looking out for us. But that's, that's totally going off the point. But
a bit of compassion, is that what you're saying, Paul? A bit of compassion, maybe?
You see, it's very, very hard for people to show compassion, Fran, if, God forbid, you find yourself in a situation where you might have been subject to violence or something by a person and all that. It's very, very difficult. So, but we have to look at treatment. We have to look at this as a problem. We have a problem, and God knows we have enough expertise. We can cure so many things. We have to look at this as an illness, Fran. Addiction is an illness. If you went into, if God forbid, there's a terrible strain of flu going around at the moment, if you'd go to your GP, or worst case now, you'd be put into hospital, you get treated for it. This has to be looked at. I know a situation where there's people living in a tent at the moment. I know there's drugs involved. Now imagine the horrible weather last night, and to be inside in a tent. You go out driving at the weekend, and again, Jesus, a black day in this county following the weekend, and my sincerest condolences to the families of those poor, misfortunate kids that lost their lives. But you see that we just have to look at the bigger situation. You see it on the roads, Fran. It's the papers are there this morning, the stats are there now to prove it. That we have to look at this as a huge, huge problem in this country. And we can't just keep putting it under the carpet. And it's happening, people with alcohol, but it's now moved. Before, drugs were just, say, city-based, Dublin, Cork, Galway, whatever. Now, I guarantee you can go to the smallest little village in the country, and if you want to get drugs, you can get them. I was doing a gig one night and in a town, and I couldn't believe the amount of people that were in and out of the toilet. They said to me, Jesus, if their bladders are that weak, God loves them. But they weren't. Everyone knows what they were doing. It's everywhere. It could be right under your nose now and you wouldn't, and you see it. That was never the way,
and this is the acceptable face of it, if you know what I mean. This is the so-called recreational aspect of it.
There is, and again, and we've glorified some high-profile people who have lost their lives. They are no better. It's same as me, Fran. I am no better than that poor misfortunate man that morning above in the square in Tala. And high-profile people who have lost their lives to drugs as well, they are no better. But we'll demonise the misfortunates. And those people never ask for that. Now, I know, there's people going to light up your computer screen now and say, Jesus, he's talking to his backside, and imagine, tell that to the people who have been robbed or whatever it is. And yes, absolutely, I agree. But we have to look at this. We have to, whether we're a great country for laws and regulations, we're a hopeless country for enforcement. And we need to. It just needs to be looked at, Fran, and I don't even know how. Bring in the experts. God knows there's no people working in treatment centres who can advise. Forget these quangos and all this nonsense. Proper, effective work has to be done. But I would urge people, them, if you think that your drinking is a bit out of control, or God forbid if you have an urge to take something else, just think of it. And if anybody wants to contact AA or contact, there is help there. Give your GP a ring. They will help you. And I would urge people.
All right. Paul, most interesting, and a lot of reaction to this, and all positive about your own story. And look, thanks for making contact with us about this, Paul.
No problem,
and happy
Fran.
Christmas to you and yours.
I just want to wish a very happy Christmas to you and to all the people in Tipp FM and all your listeners, Fran. And thanks for listening to me.
Great to talk to you, as always, Paul. Thank you for that. That's Paul Lafford speaking to us today. 1800 938 007. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
As you're well aware at this point, 3 people died in 2 separate road crashes in Tipperary over the weekend. On Saturday, 2 young men died in a car accident in the Ballinunty area. I'm joined now by Senator Imelda Goldsboro, who's based in Ballingarry. Good morning to you, Imelda.
Good morning, Fran. How are you? And good morning to your listeners.
And thanks for your time this morning. It's such a tragedy, Imelda.
It's so sad. It caused a devastating effect over the Slieve-Ardagh area on Saturday evening when news came through of the accident and how serious it was, and that there was lives lost. So, and 2 individuals so young. It's having a very, very dark cloud over the area. And so many people knew both individuals. They were quite popular and had a large range of friends. So my sincere sympathies to both families and the friends and all those that knew them.
That's a great community spirit in that area that you've often spoken to us about, Imelda. I guess communities will pull together at a time like this.
Communities will pull together. It's going to be a long week. It's very heartbreaking for families to receive that news, to get the knock on the door, and compliments to all the emergency services that attended the scene. It must have an awful impact on those themselves, and to be actually going out and making that phone call or visiting the house with that devastating news must be horrific for the families involved. At this time, I do know in the Killinall area, without mentioning that, I know the names aren't released.
No, not officially yet, yes.
Yes, they have. They are rallying together. I know Killinall will put out all stops. Everybody will be there to support the families during this difficult time and the friends of those that are involved. I would urge people in the coming days, when it's affecting their young people, so there isn't a large amount of young friends, just reach out, make sure that they're okay. It can be devastating for young people to have to deal with grief of a friend or a family member. So just to reach out. I know Seesaw have offered their services to the community as well, and just to encourage the young people to talk. It's okay to talk. They are grieving, they are hurt, they are angry. And also, Fran, just to think of the 2 girls that are injured as well.
Of course. Wishing
them a full recovery, and hopefully in the coming days that they'll be improving health-wise.
Of course, the local clubs won't be found wanting either, Imelda.
No, when it comes to a tragic accident like this, you get to see rural Ireland and how it's united and how it comes together to offer their supports and services. And something so small as a slice pan of sandwiches, or somebody calling to the house just to check in to make sure things are okay. It means so much in a difficult time, because people are grieving, they're upset, they're anxious, they're not eating. It's quite difficult for them. You have a fantastic community in Killinall and a number of other organisations. And I know they're going to rally together. It's quite evident over the weekend. And then you also have a number of family members that are involved in the GA. So Killinall will not leave the families wanting in any way. And I'd be very confident of that. And I also know the coming days will be difficult, and just to make sure that the younger people I would be concerned for, that they do reach out and look and avail of any support services that are there.
Of course, when it comes to people like yourself, Imelda, and local priests and local people involved in club, it's so difficult to know what to say to a family that is trying to come to terms with such tragedy.
It's very difficult, Fran. It's like at this time, it's the fear of the unknown. Yeah. It's getting that phone call. As a parent of 3 teenagers myself, when I heard the news broke through, I checked to see where my 3 were, and it resonated with me. Imagine if I got that phone call on Saturday evening and the effect and impact that it would have on my home. So I can only imagine the pain and suffering that the families are going through. And to look at it as a public representative, there's so many questions asked, and you don't have the answer. You don't have the answers. But I do know, the families will know that there is people there to support. Everybody is thinking of them, and it can be difficult. And sometimes people just want to be on their own to grieve. Sometimes maybe in a week's time, when everybody's gone back to working and different things, to call in and just let them know that you're there, you're thinking of them. Reach out with a text. Everything helps. And something so small can have such a big impact, and people mightn't realise it.
Imelda, thanks for your time today. Thank you and good morning to you. That's Senator Imelda Goldsboro speaking to us there. Leanne is with me. Leanne, you have some numbers that may be of assistance to people out there who might need some help following that great tragedy indeed.
Yeah, I know it's a tough time for a lot of people, and someone might just want a listening ear, maybe someone they don't know, which a lot of people say sometimes. So I have some numbers, and I have them here. If anyone wants to get in touch with us, we'll point them in the right direction as well. So Seesaw, of course, we were talking about earlier. So it's 052 617 2477.
Okay.
So they're always there to help. And we've the Samaritans as well. They have their free phone line if anyone feels they might need a chat. It's 116 123. And then obviously in light of what Paul Lafford said, if anyone feels like, in relation to alcohol, if they feel like they might need a listening ear, it's 1800 459 459. So that's the HSE's free line for anyone that might be struggling with drugs or alcohol.
Right. As a young person yourself, Leanne, when you hear about tragedy like that and that sort of loss of life of young people, how do you feel about that? How do you come to terms with that?
It's devastating.
Yeah.
And when I heard it yesterday, I was just heartbroken. I don't think like that. It's what do you say? And how do you react to that? Because it's real lives lost. And I think, look, we see headlines all the time, but when it's so close to home, and Tipperary, it's a small place, and it's a place where people love each other and connect with each other, and it's a loss to everybody. And you can feel that. And for the family and the friends involved, just to know that everyone's thinking of you, because there's nothing you can say to make it feel better right now, because it's such a tragedy. But there's support there, and hopefully they know, because we all get into our car, and that's the thing. It could be anybody. We all drive at night, we all drive in the dark, we all have family members who might be starting out driving, and it's scary because it's a thing that could happen to anybody.
Absolutely, and that's for sure. So you will have those numbers if anybody want them, Leanne. So it's 1800 938 007. People want to talk to you, and thanks very much indeed for that, Leanne. We're going to leave the last word to Tom Carew, who said, listening to your guest describe how he took pity on an unfortunate gentleman on the street reminds me of a quotation from the Dalai Lama, where he says, be kind whenever possible, it's always possible, says Tom to us. That's it for me. Leanne produced, Ali looks after content, Stephen has the Time Tunnel and the Lunchtime Show. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye now.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.